Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Laurie Smith on Blog Talk Radio. Good evening. It is 9:30 p.m. here in Calgary, Alberta, Friday night, September the 24th. I'm happy to be here. This is Child Abuse Prevention and Human Rights Abuse Prevention is Up to Us. 30-minute live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and the chat room is open if anybody would like to sit in there. I wanted to continue looking at some information that we were talking about earlier this week, Wednesday night, from a website called, it's the Child Abuse Survivor Monument website. You can find it also at irvingstudios.com. So that's www.irvingstudios.com. Or you can type into your browser Child Abuse Survivor Monument, and that will come up too. And this website is just awesome. I wanted to finish kind of looking at what Michael C. Irving had written there about the different types of abuse and contributed on his pages there. That's a great website. And really, Michael C. Irving he's a psychotherapist, he's a sculptor, and he is a survivor of child abuse. And he created this Child Abuse Survivor Monument quite a few years ago now in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And well, not that long ago, but a few years ago. And I've never seen it. I've never been there to see it, but the website is just awesome. And I know I have, talked to one of the participants who actually participated in that Child Abuse Survivor Monument. And it's just awesome. Like, I hope everybody will go and take a look at this website and see this monument that was made and created for, to honor and in memory of all the victims of child abuse that ever were and all that will be, sadly, and then become survivors of child abuse, right? So I hope you will check it out. There's some great info on there for survivors as well, coping lists and how to stay grounded, how to cope and how to heal, how to work to move forward on your healing journey. It's a great website for survivors, and it's also very factual and informational as far as the info that surrounds the types of child abuse, what is child abuse, what is neglect, So I wanted to finish looking at that. And so that's what we're going to take a look at here tonight. I'm just going to give you that link again, www.irvingstudios.com/child_abuse_survivor_monument/disabled.htm, because I want to look at the next section, which was that he has here, which is the abuse of individuals with disabilities. And I'm just going to read right from the page and then throw in whatever else that I know or have heard of. It says, power imbalances are more extreme in disabled relationships. Societal devaluation of people with disabilities increases their vulnerability to victimization. So it says society's ignorance of the abuses towards disabled people leaves them more vulnerable to further abuse. And society and its systems are abusive to the disabled and their families. So it's just going to be good to look at this. I actually did I believe it was a Dreamcatchers Talk Radio on Wednesday night. I actually wanted to take a look at that. So I found some great information about the whole issues that surround child abuse and, that's being perpetrated towards children with disabilities. And, just how serious and how vulnerable they really are. They are the most vulnerable of vulnerable as far as children go. They quite often have speech impairments, hearing impairments, vision impairments, so they can't quite often communicate to tell other people that, or to get help, if they are being abused. And so that's the whole issue surrounding the whole, really epidemic of abuse towards children and children with disabilities, right? It's even worse for them because they quite often cannot communicate to let anybody know the abuse is happening. And quite often they're isolated. They don't realize maybe what's happening to them is wrong because they might have developmental disabilities, intellectual impairments and whatnot. So it's absolutely horrible. And I think that we really have to take a look at this, and anyone who works with children who have disabilities, to make sure that you know the signs and symptoms of abuse, of all the different kinds of abuse, whether it's physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, sexual, neglect, you name it. We have to know the signs and symptoms and then do the right thing and get that child some help. They were talking about on this website that, not this one here, but the other one that I was talking about on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio here the other night, that, so many times, even if someone knows the abuse is happening, they won't do anything about it because they have a hard time finding a place that will actually care for their disabled child. So, they'll just allow the abuse to continue because they don't know what else to do. A lot of times parents and caregivers just are sort of in a situation where they don't think they have any other avenues or any way of changing the situation or making it better, and that it will actually get worse if they speak out against the abuse, right? So this is really sad because this should never happen. No child should ever be abused, right? So I'm not a professional counselor or therapist. I don't hold any certificates in those areas. I'm just a private citizen paying to do my own blog talk shows. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children, a volunteer position which I love doing. And I'm also, I study, child rights mainly and human rights. I'm in between courses at MRU. I want to finish taking my courses, and I have not been able to afford to go back. So once I can financially afford to go back to school, I will be going back to continue my studies in international community development, which encompasses human rights, child rights, and the whole issues surrounding that. So youth justice and whatnot. So I really wanted to continue on, but I haven't been able to. So I study all the time. And this is what I'm doing, researching, studying, trying to, gain as much knowledge and education as I can in between courses because, there's no sense in stopping studying just because I can't afford to go to school. So I continually am looking at information and broadening my knowledge, and I figured, hey, I'll just pass this information on to other people. If they want to listen and tune in, that's great. So I have so many people listening to my shows, and I thank you all so much for listening. I have like 11,000, almost 200 shows listened to now. So 11,200 shows. So somebody's listening. Thank you so much for tuning into my shows. I really appreciate it. And, so I'm not a counselor or therapist. I don't have any certificates in that area, right? I'm just a private citizen. You have to listen at your own discretion. And you have to know what's good for you to listen to. So if you think the topics might bother you, right, because the topics of abuse are very sensitive. And so if you think it might make you uncomfortable, you just have to turn the show off. You would not be hurting my feelings at all. And if you're a survivor of child abuse, you have to know what will trigger you. So if you're not sure if the topic would trigger you or not, it's better not to listen. You want to be in a safe place when you're listening to this type of material, any kind of show like this or material, reading or on TV or whatever, because things can trigger survivors. Certain information can cause, a survivor to trigger, and then of course if you're not in a safe enough place, you might self-injure or you might injure someone else, right? You just don't know. So you want to be very, very careful and know where you're at in your healing journey when you're listening to this type of thing. If you're not feeling strong enough to listen, just turn it off. You can always come back and listen another time. Hopefully the archives will be here for a long, long time. And if you just wanted to really check it out, you're more than welcome to come back and listen to my archives, right? So, and if you're a young person under the age of 18, I always ask that young people under the age of 18 have an adult, permission to listen to my show. Mainly because there's a lot of adult content on my shows, and the topics of abuse are just not talked about out in mainstream society. There are people talking about it, lots of voices out here, but just not mainstream. So it's not something you will hear on the TV very often. You might see a commercial once in a while, about once a year, come out about, stopping child abuse, preventing child abuse. You might hear a radio announcement about some organization who's doing something in the area to help prevent and stop child abuse, but we don't hear about abuse, and we don't hear about the issues of adult survivors and what they have to go through and what these children are going through who are being abused, and we don't hear anything much about prevention, right? So the topics can be a little bit scary for young people if they've never heard a whole lot about abuse. So you want to make sure that you have permission to listen to my shows, and mainly because I believe in standing up and protecting children. That's what I'm doing. That's what I do as an advocate, to stand up for child rights worldwide, not just in North America. But right now my focus is North America. But the whole issue is that all of us at Dreamcatchers for Abused Children are working on our own, volunteering to do this 24 hours a day, as much as we can possibly get the education and information out to people to try to protect children's lives, to stand up and protect children's rights. And you have to keep yourself safe. There are a lot of sick people out there, child sexual predators, pedophiles and whatnot, who are waiting to get a hold of a child. They will do anything, they'll say anything to get you to meet them somewhere and then assault you sexually. And you do not want to be a victim of a child sexual predator or a pedophile. So You have to get the education and keep yourself safe. And it's no good living in fear. Fear will not get you very far. Education will. Knowing how to keep yourself safe, knowing how to keep yourself safe when you're online. Parents need to know how to keep their family safe and themselves safe online, and just make sure that you do have permission to listen to these types of shows, so that, you know, if you have a question or you just think, well, maybe I better get somebody to check the show out, like if you have a teacher, a counselor at school, somebody you trust who can listen to the show if your parents don't care, which I know all about that, then, you know, they can help you make the decision whether you should be listening or not. So I always say this on every show because it's so important to me to protect children, right? You have to protect yourself. There's a lot of crazy, sick people out there. So we'll get right into this topic here, the abuse of individuals with disabilities. We'll continue on looking at this. It says their families, the families of the children who are disabled, are stretched emotionally, physically, and financially. There is significant lack of community support and resources for individuals with disabilities. Professional caregivers are inadequately prepared and trained for the individuals and conditions they will work in, and they are often poorly paid for their jobs. Society's fear and ignorance of disabilities is disabling, right? It's just a lack of ignorance. It's a lack of education. It's a lack of understanding, which is in itself a form of abuse, because people often project their fears and their opinions, about something or towards someone who is disabled, right, who has a disability. And it's just more abuse on top of it. So being disabled is no reason for, and they list this off, being treated with a lack of respect, right? That's absolutely wrong. Name calling and put downs, that's abuse. Being taken advantage of with unsolicited touches and or hugs, right? Needing to keep defending yourself, stigmatization, not being seen as a whole person, not having one's individuality respected, inability to see a disabled person as someone who thinks, hears, sees, feels, and hurts, right? They just think that people who have disabilities or impairments of any type would just, would not feel these things, It's absolutely just a lot of ignorance, really. Power imbalances are more extreme in disabled relationships. And it says some reports show that sexual and physical abuse of individuals with disabilities runs as high as 3 to 4 times higher than abuse in the general population. And it says it might be speculated that disabled women and girls are perceived as ideal targets because their disabilities may mean they are unable to flee or communicate easily. And the very fact that they are females, smaller, and socialized to be passive, they might have always been told and taught and made to be passive, right? So then again, it may increase the risk of abuse. A study by the Seattle Rape Relief Development Disabilities Project found that 90% of the girls and women referred to them had been exploited by relatives or individuals they knew. And that's Dawn, Disabled Women's Network, Toronto. That's a statement by Dawn. That's just horrible, and we know that it happens. And it's absolutely pathetic and wrong. And, like I was talking about, I saw there was a headline out there not too long ago, maybe about 2 months ago, that we read on Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. And when we were covering the headlines one night, and this headline was that these 2 parents had been videotaping themselves with their children and having sex, different type of pornographic stuff, right? And one of the children was disabled in a wheelchair. And they had raped him or sodomized him or whatever. But the whole issue is that parents are doing this to their children. So if you think it can't happen, think again. So if parents would do this to their children, you can imagine that other people would do this to children. And a lot of people don't think about the whole issue of abuse and where it happens and why it happens. I'll just give you some stats that are actually real and 100% factual. 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys will experience some form of sexual abuse under the age of 18. So whether that's sexual touching, molestation, rape, you name it. So 1 in 3 girls, 1 in 6 boys, right? Well, 90 to 95% of abuse happens within the home. That's a fact. And that's just what's reported. So, there's a whole lot of abuse that goes unreported and it goes undetected. So 90 to 95% of abuse happens within the home, which is really sad, and it's by a person who the child trusts and knows, relatives, parents, relatives, caregivers, close family relatives, distant family relatives, friends of the family that just, are kind of like family, right? The child would know and trust this person. 90 to 95% of abuse happens in the home. And the other 5 to 10% is some sort of random act, like a child sexual predator getting a hold of your child at Walmart, or, something like that, right? Care, babysitter, somebody who's not related to you and it's outside the home. That's only 5 to 10%. The rest of it's happening in the home. That just gives you a real good, clear picture of what's going on. So where do you think abusers, child sexual predators and whatnot would like to hang around? Well, they'd like to hang around where the kids are. So they will quite often get jobs in schools. They will get jobs where they get to work with children. Some of these sick individuals might get a job trying to work with disabled children, especially if they knew that the disabled children could not speak out, right? Because they'd be like, hey, here's my perfect opportunity to do what I want to do to a child, because they can't speak out. Their voice, they can't speak. They have speech impediment, and these children might be developmentally disabled as well, or intellectually impaired, so they might be just, laying there, not able to even raise their arms or communicate in any form or fashion, right? And so then these people would have just free will to do whatever they want. They'd have free range, free course to do whatever they wanted to do with these children. And who hangs around children? Well, people that work with children. Well, where do you think the child sexual predators would like to be at all times? Around children. So you have to be very, very careful as a parent. The reason I'm bringing this up is because if you're a parent, you're listening to this, people quite often trust the teachers. They trust these people who are these figures of authority. They've gone to school. Hey, they went and got a university degree. Whoop-de-doo. Lawyers, doctors, nurses, school teachers, men and women. If you have a school teacher, like I know myself, if I was a parent, because I have the education. See, education is very, very important. It actually will stop child abuse, right? If I was a parent, and I had a child who was attending a school, I would Google the teacher's name, and I would want a background check done on the teacher. Because there's so many sick teachers out there, and they are on the web. When they get busted for abusing children sexually, their information ends up on the web. So all you have to do is Google their name, and unless they're using a fake name or a false name, you can find who these teachers are, where they're teaching. You might not be able to find out where they're currently teaching. You could find out where they were teaching, because they get moved around. They don't do any jail time. I mean, sometimes they do, but mainly they don't do any jail time. They just face the school board, and they get shipped off to another school so they can abuse other children. Well, you wouldn't believe how many female teachers there are that sexually abuse children. And I'm not saying that all teachers abuse children, because that's like saying all parents abuse their kids. That's not a fact. The fact is there's some awesome teachers out there who would do anything and give their lives to protect children. And the same with coaches, and the same with anybody who works with children. So I'm not saying that, I'm in any way that, everyone who works with children is some sort of a child sexual predator. That is not true. You know what I mean? It's the fact that you have to be very cautious, because it's just a fact that there's so many child sexual predators and pedophiles who do choose to work with children just for this very reason. And that is sad, but I'm telling you, you do not want your child to be a victim of a child sexual predator or a pedophile. You really don't. So get the information, learn the facts on how to keep your children safe, right? It's so important. Discussion, it says the abuse of individuals with disabilities. Realities, fear and ignorance exist. People without disabilities are afraid of those who do have disabilities, and they don't understand the disabled. They sometimes take advantage of disabled people, and the disabled often encounter a lack of respect, such as name-calling and put-downs. That's just a fact in society, because they see them as weaker, imperfect. Something's wrong with them, so they put them down. And so many times people will do that for many. If anybody in the crowd seems to be weaker or different, then you got the whole crowd banding together to put them down or call them names, except for the few that will stand up for them. There's generally someone in the crowd who's willing to speak their mind and stand up for somebody, but sometimes there's not. People often make assumptions of a disabled person and don't ask the person themselves or check the person's body language. They often treat the disabled person differently, taking liberties without permission, such as touching them or doing things for them that the disabled person would often prefer to do for themselves. Disabled people are often at the mercy of their caregivers, having to conform to imposed routines without choice. They are treated as children with no rights, and people don't even say, "excuse me," sort of thing, right? Professional administrators and those who work with the disabled aren't always able to understand the individual disabled person's reality. The professionals often perceive things differently, and additionally, facilities are often understaffed, with staff sometimes becoming abusive with the individuals, treating them without understanding or empathy. So staff are inadequately prepared, trained, and paid for their jobs. Professionals in the field are overworked and burned out. And without any support and recognition, the disabled are also sometimes over-medicated, in those instances suffering a form of drug abuse. And so that's sad, you know what I'm saying? And this is what happens with, in the whole issue with regarding, those who work with children and trying to, after a child's been removed from the home, they go through the system. All those people are burned out, and they're all, stressed out, and they're overworked, social workers and whatnot. It's the same situation. These human services, right? They really have to. The government has to do something to sort of step this up a bit, because you know how many children are being abused right now who are going to need help, and there won't be any help for them. We saw an article not too long ago. This was, I'd say maybe back in the summertime, where there was a certain city in Texas, the state of Texas, that there was so many children abused that they were all on a waiting list. This was not from one family. This was hundreds of children on a waiting list to be seen by professionals, because there was no one to see them. So they weren't even going to get any help, professionally, like whether to be counseling or, special therapist or whatever, to see these abused children, to see how much damage was done. They were on a waiting list because there's so many. That's how serious this is. This is a real problem, everybody. And a lot of people are saying right now, we hear there's articles coming out in the paper saying, child abuse, it's not a problem, and all this stuff. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. How about go visit a few police officers, a few doctors who work with children in the children's hospitals around the country. Go talk to some police officers who've had to drag out and check out the body bags, and these children who are being killed and murdered in their homes and abused horrifically. Go check out the detectives and the FBI who are working to try to stop these child pedophile, these rings, these sex rings that are all, child sex slave trade stuff going on. Go talk to some of these professionals. They'll give you a little bit of a 2 cents on what a problem it is. It's an epidemic, and it's got to stop. And, if we don't stand up and raise our voices, who's going to? You know what I mean? So that's why, hey, I've got nothing better to do with my time, let me tell you that. I have to work a certain portion of hours, to pay my rent and stuff. But if I didn't have to be doing that, then a 24-hour, I have to sleep a little bit too. But after that, the rest of my time would be doing nothing but advocating and speaking out against child abuse, standing up for children to protect their rights, because children have rights. They have the right to life. So do the disabled, so we may as well throw this in here. Since we're talking about people, who have these disabilities and whatnot, they have the right to life. They have the right to a good life. They have the right to shelter, to safety, protection, love, nurturing, caring environment. They have the right to go to school. They have the right to pursue an education. They have the right to government. They have the right to be free from abuse. They have the right to grow up and enjoy their lives. They have the right to health care. They have the right to good food and good drinking water. They have the right to all of this stuff, to spiritual, and religious, they have the right to their own religion, their own spirituality. They have the right to pursue their genealogy. They have the right to live, right? And these people and these parents out here who are killing their children are taking those rights away. And then, we have a whole bunch of people saying, oh, child abuse, it's not a problem. Give me a break. Come on. We already know that, see, those people that say that kind of stuff, I think they just do it for fun, because and that's a sad, sick way to have fun. I can think of so many better ways that would be normal and healthy to enjoy myself, rather than making statements like that are just so stupid and ludicrous, and it's totally, I can't even believe that somebody would print it in the paper, you know what I mean? But this is the whole issue. There's a lot of ignorant people out there, and that's the sad part. And that's why I wanted to be one more voice, because I thought, man, I cannot sit back and, from the home that I grew up in and the way that I grew up and not get involved. You know what I mean? And it's not like out of some sense of duty or something, that I thought, well, I have to get involved. It's just that I thought, okay, here's all these other people out here raising their voices, and they are trying to make a difference in this thing and stop child abuse. And I'm just going to sit on the couch knowing what I know and knowing what these children are going through out there, because I've been through it, and knowing what their lives are going to be like when they grow up. I thought, my God, I have to stand up. I have to do something to try to add my voice in there, so that's what I'm doing. And I hope everybody else will do the same thing. So it says here, people often cross boundaries when relating to a disabled person that they normally would not with others. The disabled are often put into the position of defending themselves in order to maintain their own respect and dignity. And it says abuse. Disabled children have no boundaries. They're not allowed to think or feel for themselves, starting with basic routines and the experiences of daily living. Emotionally, they are even denied their feelings and the expressions of those feelings, such as crying, sexuality, and growth. And that's just the whole situation with abuse of any child, right? Power imbalances are more extreme in disabled relationships. Disabled individuals are often reliant on others to speak for them due to an inability to express language, or the inability of others to pick up on their cues, right? Body language or whatever. The sense of a disabled person as an individual being is sometimes lost completely, right? And that's absolutely horrible. And so we have to look out for these people and protect them in any way that we can. So if you know of a child who has a disability, make sure you are aware of the signs and symptoms of abuse, what to look for, watch their body language, watch the cues, be paying attention, right? Because we want to save children's lives, and we want to stop child abuse, right? So we have to do the right thing. And it says disabilities and the lack of understanding of those disabilities by others can further compound and create other disabilities. The families of the disabled are stretched emotionally, physically, financially. There are minimal community supports. In fact, there is a great lack of systemic support and resources. There's poor funding available. See, there's poor funding for everything regarding children, because children the value on children doesn't amount to much. I mean, people are killing their children out there, and they're getting 2 years in time served and a couple $100 fine. But, if you steal a car, you're going away for a long time. Grand theft auto. But you can kill your children. That's what the courts are saying by passing out these stupid 2-year sentences and 5-year sentences, and they get 2 years off for good behavior or something like that. It's absolutely ridiculous. And there's just no value placed on children's lives. You know why? Adults don't have relationships with children. They don't. They don't feel the need to try to protect them, except for some caring parents out there and some of these other people, thank God, that are. But, there's a large portion of society that feels that children just don't count, they don't matter. And that's just not true. So people with disabilities, if you think about that, you think how much more, down the rung they are as far as the way society looks at them. They really don't count and don't matter, out of sight, out of mind, right? So this is what, poor funding. Funding is the issue. And, there's good programs out there that do work, but they are underfunded. And it's the same with Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. I mean, we're just waiting on funding to begin our programs, which is what we will be doing in the future. It's going to be awesome. And I hope you will keep checking back, because we are going to be moving forward as soon as we get the funding. So it's just, this is it. There's the poor funding. Well, guess what? They're spending $104 billion because of child abuse. So we have about a minute left. But I say, multiply the $104 billion by 5 and get $500 billion to stop child abuse once and for all, and let's just move on with something else. Because no child deserves to be abused, I tell you that. And we have to stop this now. This has to be the generation to do it. And I figure I've got nothing better to do with my time. If I live another 20, 30 years, well, this is what I'll be doing. So there you go. So have a great night, everybody. Take care of yourselves. I'll be back on the weekend. You can check out my show page. And next week as well, one child abuse survivor to another will continue on 6 o'clock a.m. And have yourselves a great weekend. If I can do anything or, find resources for you or help you out with anything, let me know on, Blog Talk Radio or Facebook. And certainly can try to help you find information anyway. And yeah, if you're a survivor, just keep reaching out. That's all I got to say. You know, you deserve so much better, and if, you know, you need to reach out and get help. And if you're someone who's being abused right now in an abusive situation, whether it's a child abuse or domestic violence, you make sure you make a phone call. You get yourself some help, and you keep yourself alive. Okay. Have a great night, everybody. I'll just keep you in my heart till next time. Bye bye.